Gosh, you're reminding me of why one of the biggest reasons I started Angel Aid and continue the work at Rare Givers is because our daughter Chloe is also a carrier of rare disease, Hunter syndrome. So we have three generations: my mother, myself, and my daughter. And when you're dating someone, do you say, I carry this rare genetic disease that could really impact, my choice, my children? And do you say that on a first date or a 20th date? Do you bring that up in family planning, or do you just, roll the odds and follow your faith? I mean, these are complex emotional conversations, and I think the only way to tackle them is with an open heart and talk it through and do that in community. And so your willingness to be open and talking about these things just brings relief. There's relief in witnessing and feeling witnessed. And so thank you for doing that.
In terms of like dating life and relationships, is like you wonder, when do you bring these things up? And I think that's something that I really wrestle with obviously being a little person. It's very obvious, so I don't have to bring that up, but it is definitely something that questions my value and my worth, in terms of like being like, is someone who's you know, taller than me, because 90%, 99% of people are taller than me. Are they going to accept that? Like, is my heart and my emotional and my mental capacity and my rationale and my logic and like all of these things that I do bring to the table, does that trump the things that I don't necessarily bring to the table? And when do you bring up, again, like, for me, when do I bring up I have Crohn's disease? I might pass that along. I might pass along my short stature. Like, I don't know, because even doctors, I haven't fully been tested for, if I hold that primary genetic marker. Doctors have kind of given me a general idea that it's 50-50, that there's 50% chance that I pass it along, 50% chance that I don't. So one thing is that, I'll say is that if I was to pass that along, that the incredible thing is that I dealt with it. I know how to live with it. So if my child is short stature like me, I can give them the tools of dealing with, one, the physical side of it, and two, dealing with the emotional, the mental, the spiritual side of it. And I think that's harder coming from someone who's outside of it and hasn't seen it or hasn't lived with it. It's harder for them to think, well, if my child is this way or that way or has this condition or this thing, like, how are they going to live, or how are they going to deal with it? So I think it's just trying to understand, and put yourself in their shoes. That they're going to be asking a lot of questions and trying to come to terms with, well, I don't know if I want, my child to have to deal with that. And that's not a bad thing. I think sometimes we go, oh, you're not being inclusive, or you're, hating on people with this and that. It's like, no, like, the reality is, like, you want the absolute best for your family. You want the absolute best for your child. Um, and they may end up having these different abilities, but just because you don't want them to have these different abilities, you don't want them to have these challenges or struggles, doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Just going to, one of the major topics of conversation at the moment is like the whole issue with Tylenol and potentially causing, being related to autism. The whole conversation about that is like, oh, does that mean like people with autism are bad? It's like, no. Like, if I could choose to spare my child from having autism and not have to struggle with that challenge for their entire life, would I? Of course, that doesn't mean I think people with autism, don't deserve the same rights and the same quality of life and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean that I hate people with autism. It just means that if I can spare my child from struggling with those, challenges, of course I'm going to do that. Like, so sometimes I think when we allow the emotional to overtake our reasoning and our logic, it's not good. So I think we need to be realistic and just try and see it from the other person's perspective that hasn't dealt with it or hasn't experienced it around them. So
Yeah. Yes, yes. Well, so you've talked about um, stepping away from the word disease and
mm,
stepping into a different vernacular, different way of describing different abilities, unique abilities. And part of that is through storytelling, right? That we can change how people think about things through storytelling. And this is in rare disease, this is not a small community of people. This is 1 in 10 families worldwide.
mm,
I mean, that's more families than AIDS and cancer combined, right? So
mm,
this is what I would say a large majority of our population is affected because we have, people in our community that we may not even realize the struggles that they have behind their front door or even, just internally. So talk about rare disease, talk about your vision for the future, how your filmmaking, your storytelling, your abilities as an actor and an artist and a producer to kind of change how people are thinking. I think that would be a really nice way to kind of inspire the next generation.
absolutely. So I mean, one of my passions, or one of my biggest passions, obviously is mental health, because I think that affects, us, with all these different categories. But another thing is that the different ability community, we make up 26% of the world's population. That's one of the biggest percentage populations in the world, like bigger than, different nationalities, different races, different, people with cancer, people with AIDS, all that kind of stuff. That's a huge percentage of the world's population. And I think one thing is that at any time, at any moment in your life, you can become a part of the different ability community. Like, you could live your entire life being, normal, and then you could get into a car accident. You could have a health issue where you have to lose a limb, or something like that. So then you enter into our different ability community. And so I think it's changing the narrative around, how people with different abilities are portrayed, how we're seen as, unfortunately, by many people as less, not as equal, not as able to do, the same things or have the same quality of life as, able-bodied people, or people with non-different abilities. And so my thing with that is being an actor, and I think now transitioning a little bit more into the behind the scenes as a producer, I really want to create stories that give us that perspective, um, that help to show stories of how you live your life. Um, I'm not doing a great way of explaining this. Hold on. I want to tell stories that show that everyone is has that worth and has that value, whether or not you have a different ability. Because growing up, being a little person, I've always been kind of excluded, and as being an actor, I'm always involved in stories without specifically seeking a little person. And, I think that's incredible. And of course, I want to do these roles, but also there's only seeing me as a little person. disqualifies me from being just a regular human being. Like, I go through everything else that every other human being goes through. I go through the emotional challenges, I go through the physical challenges. I have the same goals and passions and desires as everyone else. And every person in the different ability community has the same thing. So when you disqualify them based on their different abilities, thinking that they don't have the same goals, they don't have the same passion, they don't have the same creative artistic expression, that's really dehumanizing. And so I want to tell stories that really bring up the level where someone who's a little person can get into a relationship, can be seen as a romantic partner, can be seen as the action hero, can be seen as a father, can be seen as a husband, and there's and just normalizing that just because have something different about you. It doesn't disqualify you from all these different roles. And so right now I'm creating a romance drama that really goes into a lot of the challenges and the issues that I faced growing up and still face today, where Hollywood, unfortunately, will never see me as a romantic lead. I just don't think they have the vision for that, and so I'm creating that story and that narrative, and it goes even further to tell my story and my experience with chronic illness of having Crohn's disease, and then also suicide awareness. So this project, which I'm really passionate about, really goes into exploring all these different categories of chronic illness, suicide awareness, emotional and mental health, romantic. Sorry about that. It just got a call.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. That's human. Hello. I mean, we're being human here, but that's the opportunity. I think that the time is right for you, Sam, to bring your perspective to the world because we can self-publish now. There's a lot of channels. Hollywood is different than it's ever been.
Mhm.
The definition of what Hollywood is changing. So let's work together to change that as we move forward. One thing I will say is I wasn't 30, I wasn't didn't get to meet my love of my life until my mid 30s, and so you got a few more years to go of living before you get to get into that. But
Hopefully.
I see it for you, and
Um,
hope the best for you, and can't wait to continue on this journey with you as a Rare Givers 100, just as a new friend, and as an actor and a producer and a storyteller. Cannot wait, and a book author and a writer. I can't wait to see where you bring, your very, very beautiful life
yeah.
to bear into the world. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I try to use my words as carefully as I can because, again, I know, like, when people just kind of open their mouths and they don't really think much about what they say, it can be very harmful. And so I tend to be very careful and I try to be very articulate about what I say and what I express because it's a crazy world out there, and everyone tries to take things out of context. And um, as I go into my new season of trying to become a public speaker and write my books, tell my stories, hopefully we can help to change the world, or one person's life in just a tiny little way. Because I always say that whether I change 100 million people's lives or whether I change one person's lives, it's no difference. That one person's life is just as equally as valuable as 100 million people's lives. So that's always my mission. Is just think about the one other person's life that I might change.
Yes, well, we've explored it all today. We've explored emotional well-being, we've explored celebrity status and acting and this amazing world of The Greatest Showman. We got to explore the family life of Sam Humphrey and your professional life. And do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share? Anything else that we didn't cover, or any final thoughts you want to just kind of bring up?
I just want to say to everyone who watches this, later, just remember that, you are inherently valuable, because I think a lot of times we are our harshest critic. We are our harshest judge. And I know that, you know, as much as anyone, I really put myself down when I was younger. I really questioned my value. I really questioned my worth. And it really got caught up in, how other people saw me, how the world saw me, whether or not, I was quote unquote successful, and really trying to cultivate this image of what other people wanted me to be, rather than realizing, who do I actually want to be? You know, who is Sam Humphrey, and questioning my identity. And I know, whether or not you believe in faith, or whether or not you believe in, a higher power and God, I do. I believe that our identity comes from God, and I believe that I'm made in the image of God. And so, whether or not, I achieve the greatest things in the world, or whether or not, I don't achieve anything, I am inherently valuable as the human being that I am, because I exist, and because I'm made in the image of a creator. And so just remember that, whether you believe it or not, you are made in his image, and you are inherently valuable because you were born. And the odds of being born are 400 trillion to 1. So you're a winner just by being alive. So don't ever forget that.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much, Sam. I think we've covered it all, so so we'll pause here until the next time. But that was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. You too. All right. I'll
Okay,
see
have a
you
good afternoon.
Saturday.
Okay, we'll see you
All
Saturday.
right.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.